Did you?
Mm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there's two questions here I'm interested in. Is one, how did you process what might have felt to me, if I'm imagining being in your position, a sense of mild panic at this stage that you've gone all in on getting picked up and you're not getting picked up. So how did you handle that? And this email that you sent, I'm fascinated to know, what did you say?
Yeah, I think I thought at the age of 16, the world would come to me. And as I said, it was only during that year that I realised they're not looking for me. You've got to go and look for them. You've got to knock on their door. You know, Toto's not going to look at British Formula 4 and say, you know, there's a kid, George Russell here, who's won the championship by a couple of points. We need to sign him. But if I put myself in front of him and talk to him and show him what I'm made of, maybe there's an opportunity. So it was. I remember I was in Abu Dhabi at the time doing a test in Formula 3. I managed to get hold of his email and I thought, I've got nothing to lose. You know, worst case, he doesn't reply, in which case I've lost nothing. Best case, he replies. And I literally just sent him an email. I didn't want to go in too hard. I just said, you know, I'm George Russell, I raced this. It would be great to meet you and talk about the future potentially. And I think it was a good time to do it as well. I think timing's key. They'd just won the championship. He was standing himself on the podium after the Abu Dhabi.
And was that luck on your part, or was that a bit of foresight?
No, I that was luck. But now I look back and I realise, you know, these small things make a difference. Yeah. You know, you need somebody on the receiving end to be in the right state of mind. If he's having a bad day or he's busy, and he sees this. If I sent that email 1 week earlier, which is the Tuesday before the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, last race of the season, he probably would have seen it and disregarded it. But it was the Tuesday after Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, season's over, he's relaxed, won the championship. You know, here's an opportunity. Oh, this kid's just emailed me, and I sent this email. I think it was about 9 p.m. in the evening, and he replied within 15 minutes with his PAs copied in saying, "Hi George, nice to hear from you, and it'd be great to meet you in January." And 4 weeks later, I sat in his office.
And what was said that day?
To be honest, not a lot was said that day. I told him about my career. He asked a lot of questions. He was obviously very, very nice and gave me a lot of time. And I think that's something I've realised about Toto since day one. He gives everybody a huge amount of time. But it wasn't as simple as, all right, we're going to sign you today, and that's that. We left that conversation saying, right, I'm now going to race in Formula 3. This is where you're taking the next step. You know, we'll keep an eye on you and we'll stay in touch and we'll go from there. And it was only at the end of 2015 where we picked up the conversation again. And that's when I signed for Mercedes.
And what did you do in that intervening period? Because I think this is, again, valuable for people who are never going to race in motorsport, but have got an ambition and they know where they want to go. What did you do to stay on his radar? Like to kind of almost let him feel that he was part of your career even before you were signed. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just disappearing for a year and reappearing, which I think some people would do.
Yeah, so he actually gave me some advice to join a certain team in Formula 3. So this was a German team who raced with a Mercedes engine. So in Formula 3, there's two different engine manufacturers, Mercedes and Volkswagen. This German team, he said, I think you should join this German team. Obviously Mercedes backed, and I think it'd be a great place for you. So I said, I appreciate your opinion, and I went and did a test with them. And I ended up joining a British team called Carlin with a Volkswagen engine. So as soon as I signed with Carlin, I sent Toto an email just saying, I really thanked your advice, did the test with the German team, but I felt like joining the British team with the VW engine would be better for my future progress. And I feel like I'd learn more with the British team than with the German team. And he replied again straight away saying, you know, I sort of jokingly, I think you're making the wrong decision, but best of luck, let's stay in touch and let's see how you get on. So I think having that follow-up email where it wasn't so formal in a way, it was a bit more informal, and I'd almost gone against what he had advised. He probably saw that it's quite intriguing. You know, there's this 17-year-old kid now, 16-year-old kid who has almost gone in the opposite direction to what he advised. But I gave a good reason for it. You know, I felt like the British team would be better for me. I think joining a German team at that age would have been a little bit tough, even just with the language barrier. And that was it until December when there was an award ceremony, and Toto was there, and I thought, oh, this is my opportunity to go and speak with him again, and that's where it started.
So it sounds to me like you've started to pull on a golden thread almost, where it gives you a line of sight of, I know where I want to get to now, and it gives you a sense of direction. How frequently, when you made a decision, whether it's the team that you joined in Formula 3 or like a particular decision about a race and how you're going to respond, were you thinking about what you were going to say to Toto or what Mercedes would perceive?
I think going into that season, I just thought it's all results based. I've almost done the groundwork. Now I've put in those foundations with Mercedes, with Toto. I just need to go out there and perform. And I think it's as simple as that. I think you don't need to, as I said, those first conversations had started and those first 2 meetings went really, really well. Even though there wasn't a contract on the table, straight away, I felt like I had a good relationship with him. And I had the confidence, a year later to go at this award ceremony of the Autosport Awards to go up and just have a chat with him. And having performed, it gives you a lot of ammunition to argue your case. So I think you got to go out there, make your point, then almost leave it, and then do the talking on the track or whatever industry it is you're in.
But also a real belief in the decisions you're making. Like, are you doing all this at this point? Or is your dad going, George, send another email to Toto or your mum while she's, chatting to you at the dinner table? She's going, have you messaged that guy from Mercedes again? Or are you kind of, again, as we've spoken about a couple of times already, in your own world, controlling your own destiny?
Yeah, to be honest, most of this came from my own thoughts, really. But I'm sure it's from the way I've been brought up from my parents, and I guess they always taught me you got to go out there and make it happen for yourself. So even though it wasn't my father saying, send this email to Toto, I was sort of on my own accord going out there and trying to create these opportunities. And as I said, it was only when I was 16 I recognized if I want to achieve my dream, and it wasn't just my dream, it was also my family's dream. Mm-hmm. There had been so much sacrifice for my father, for my mother. My father used to work every day, 7:30 till 7:30. Never saw him through the week. On a Friday night, we'd jump in a camper van driving up and down the UK. And as a child, you don't really comprehend what's going on here. Why is Dad not home for dinner tonight and tomorrow night and the day after? He's there working his socks off to, put food on the table, make a living, to be able to afford to go go-kart racing. It's not straightforward. And as I said, by that age of 16, I'd won again in Formula 4, but didn't really have the money to go and race in Formula 3. If I didn't have sponsorship, that could have been the end of a journey. So it's sort of now and in my court thinking, I've got to go and do something, because clearly winning isn't just enough.
Yeah.
And what did that do in terms of your perception of pressure? So as you say, like, you almost were naive to not appreciate never seeing your dad, and it's just the way things are. And then you say that realization dawns of, shit, he's been working hard to give me these opportunities.
Yeah, I don't really know how that played on me in terms of that additional pressure. I think for sure my father was very hard on me during my whole racing career.
Go on, what do you mean by that?
And I think in go-karting, you've got my father was my mechanic throughout my go-kart career. My mum used to write down all of the data on her little notepad, all the setups, all the lap times, everything logged in this £1.50 notepad from WH Smith or whatever. And it was so passionate for all of us. And, they're standing on the sidelines, they're seeing me racing, seeing me succeed, but equally if I'm ever making a mistake. Because I think he was going through a lot of pressure. Work was not straightforward for him. All of that time and sacrifice he was making, if ever he saw his son going out there and not putting in the effort, during the race weekend, or, I'm more interested playing football with my mates in between the sessions or messing around, I guess that would probably wind him up quite a lot. And he would let me know about it, because, he's putting all this effort in for a reason. I need to go out there and show that it's worth it. And I can't be there dicking around, just having a good time when kind of we're here to win.
But then does that affect the father-son dynamic? Is it more than coach, athlete?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely probably didn't have the greatest relationship with my father through those karting days, because we were like a race team. We're not there. It was almost like we weren't there to have a good time. We were kind of there to win. And if we won, we had a good time, of course. And we'd always stop off at KFC on the way home if ever we won a race. And as a kid, I really enjoyed that. So that was kind of my reward at the end of a weekend if you did a good job. And obviously those moments are so special, but equally on the flip side, if it doesn't go to plan, I felt it, but then I would see it affecting my father and, my mother maybe less so. But yeah, for sure that added an element of pressure. And that's probably why when I got to a maturer age, 16, and realizing, right, my father has been through not just 10 years of this with me, it's 10 years prior with my brother as well. This is 20 years worth of, passion and hard work. I need to almost pull my finger out now and almost not let them down.
And that's probably why even today, when you don't have a great race weekend, you don't go out and have some food with people. You kind of do, I guess, what you learned really in that period in your life, which was, to try and process that. So it's been so interesting to hear that, people think stuff comes for free. If you've got talent, you get into Formula One, right? That's clearly not the case here. You've had to make these sacrifices, have various little moments along the way where you've had to make the right decision, and you do, and you end up in Formula One. And I remember watching from afar, because this was interesting for me, because obviously I was doing bits and pieces with Formula One as you were starting out on your journey, and then I watched you come through, and you were the most successful young British driver for a period when there was some great British drivers. Alex Albon was, based in the UK, racing under a Thai flag, and Lando Norris obviously at the same time. So I then remember watching your first season at Williams, but those guys are in a Red Bull and a McLaren and a picking up points, picking up podiums, and you're not. I'd love to know how that felt and how you processed that from being, as you described, as a young guy, like you just won everything. That's what you did, and suddenly you weren't.
Yeah, that was a really unique season for me, my first year in Formula One, joining Williams and a team that was on the brink of bankruptcy. And it was a team of every single race weekend, it was racing to survive. It wasn't racing to perform. Yeah. The team was racing to survive, and the 800 people's jobs at stake. And there was no doubt, when I got to the first race in Australia, I'm here in Formula One, almost one dream accomplished, and go out on track and we're 4 seconds off the pace. Yeah. The car's falling apart and we're being lapped 2 or 3 times. Kind of thinking to yourself, is this the dream in a way? Yeah. But I think I've always had quite a rational view to things. And while seeing Alex in Red Bull scoring podiums and, being the man to a degree, and Lando equally always into points, and that was sort of difficult to digest because I'd just come from Formula 2 where I beat them. Yeah. And now, I've almost just been put.
How did you digest it?
I thought that even though they're finishing the points and they're scoring podiums, I'm not here to score points or podiums. I'm here to win, and I want to win. And even though they were finishing ahead of me, we're all going through this journey together, learning. I was part of Mercedes, and I felt like my time will come. Yeah. So it was. I think every time from a difficult situation, you've got to try and look at the positives from it. I was driving at the back of a grid, kind of under the radar. I was making a few mistakes that season, but not many people noticed because the spotlight wasn't on me. The spotlight was on the guys at the front. Equally, the spotlight was on Lando and Alex. And if ever they made a mistake, the whole world knew about it. So I saw this as an opportunity that, I'm in Formula One, going to 21 different countries, 21 different races, different circuits. This is my opportunity to learn and perhaps try things that, for example, Alex and Lando didn't have the opportunity to because the spotlight was on. Yeah. Every single weekend was. But
also, you couldn't have done these things either because you in previous seasons were racing for titles and championships every year. So you had no exploration behind the wheel, did you?
No, absolutely. I think, and that was a real mentality change for me. I had a teammate in Robert Kubica who had a horrific accident in 2011, I think it was, and he'd been out of an F1 car for a long, long time, and he had a very difficult season. So I was almost racing in no man's land. But there was this one race in Monaco. I was driving around. I was ahead of Robert by quite a margin. I was behind the next gaggle of cars, and I kind of thought to myself, I'm just going to bring the car home, because what's the point in risking it? You know, I've kind of achieved all I can in this race. I can't beat the cars ahead. I've already beaten the car behind. Bring it home. And there was a moment in that race that I thought, this will teach me nothing. If I just drive around for the next hour and a half, just bringing the car home, this isn't going to help me in 1 year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time. If ever I'm racing for a Mercedes, if ever I'm racing for a race win or world championships. So I just sort of turned it up and just went absolutely flat out every single lap around Monaco, kind of risking everything for 19th position on the grid, because I felt like that's what I needed to do if I wanted to learn and progress. And it's from that moment on for the rest of the season that sort of every single race, every single qualifying, every single session was this opportunity for me to build a greater toolbox of experience for me to tap into for whenever I needed it in the future.